Hello and welcome back to my FPL channel. I am FPL Dean and today you're here for the best wildcard draft that you can look at for game week 21. Now, this is starting to get a little bit more interesting, so you'll have to bear with me. Obviously, Newcastle beat Arsenal in their first leg away from home at the Emirates last night, 2-0, which means that at the moment, the Arsenal-Chelsea game, unless Arsenal can pull a result out of the hat in the return leg at the start of February, means it will go ahead in game week 29. In fact, it will actually be Newcastle versus Crystal Palace that will blank in game week 29. So with that factored in, and obviously I'm making this prior to the Tottenham Liverpool game tonight at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I'm expecting Liverpool to get through on that one, but I did think that Newcastle beat Arsenal, so I've created a couple of different drafts today based on this knowledge and yeah, let me know what you think. So without further ado, make sure you press a like on the video, subscribe if you are new, because I'm here to help more than you believe. So without further ado, let's have a look at what I'm looking ahead of wildcard drafting in game week 21. So again, I wouldn't be using my wildcard now, and my team is actually set up really well, as we'll look at very shortly. And I'm actually quite happy with it. I actually think I'm in a case where I'll probably roll. Like I could potentially make a defensive transfer, but I've looked at some of the stats in Crystal Palace's defenders, and yes, they're on an amazing run, but they have not been defending very well all season long, which makes me think that Leicester are going to score, and then you're really backing in attacking returns, and I don't think Crystal Palace actually scored that many goals. So we'll just keep that in mind. So wildcarding ahead, how good are the fixture runs really? So teams in great form have to be backed in. Like Forest are in great form. Fulham have been in pretty good form, but they were disappointing on the weekend. Bournemouth have been fantastic. Liverpool, they had a bit of a miss, and Man City's attack looks like it's starting to click. And you also have to be aware of the Palace, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, Man City, Liverpool, Fulham, Forest fixture runs that are ongoing in game week 21. I know that Forest play Liverpool. I don't think that's overly bad for their defense. So if I'm being brutally honest, they defend so well, it's amazing. Is it time to shake up the forward line? Because let's be honest, everyone outside of Isak has been fairly underwhelming over the last 6 or 7 weeks. Like there's not been too many consistent returns there. Is it time to just throw it out the window, go over cheaper options, go over more expensive options? I still think it's better to go with the more expensive options. However, I can see a world where potentially Raul Jimenez probably should be one of the 3 drafts I've come up with, but he's not. And that's because of the fact that I'd rather go for the more expensive forwards, because I feel like if their teams that they play in score are more likely to score multiple goals than the teams that have the bargain based forwards. That's just my line of thinking. So that's where I'm going with that. Drafts again come down to personal preference and team value. You can't have everyone. I'm working out what strategy you want. And remember, the template at the moment is 3 players. You must have these 3 players in your team. You have to have Isak in the forward line. If you don't have him, then you should have him in your team. And you need to have Mo Salah and Cole Palmer. Definitely the 2 best scoring midfielders in the team. Outside of that, everything else is really down to what you think is best and how you want to attack the season, really, for pretty much from here on in. So without further ado, let's get into the drafts. So as we can see here, my team from the weekend did finally get a green arrow this week. I can't believe it, but I'm top 45,000 exactly. Like, what are the odds of that? That's not bad. So top 45,000, 72 points. Now, just so you're aware of how much team value I've got currently, it's only gone up a little bit over the last 4 weeks. So I raced into 106.2 in game week 17, but then I haven't really made many transfers and I haven't really been looking at team value since then, and I've only gone up to 106.9. So yeah, that's my team at the moment. Now, my team at the moment, I've got 0.6 in the bank, and I believe I'm going to roll this week. I'm actually really happy with my team. Yes, Jackson has been a little bit off the boil, but because of the fact that Chelsea versus Arsenal game is likely to be back on now in game week 29, barring Arsenal beating Newcastle by a clear 3 goals at St. James's Park, which I definitely cannot see happening, by the way. That means that I don't really want to bring in an extra Newcastle player either, because that means I'm going to have to probably transfer him out, because I'm not going to be using my free hit in game week 29. I'm going to save that till game week 34. When there's likely to be far more teams than 4 teams blanking in that game week, I'm just literally going to try and transfer out. So at the moment, my team looks really good based on the fact that it will be Liverpool against Aston Villa. So I've only got 2 Liverpool players at the moment. I will bring a third one for game week 24 and 25, because I think you need to be playing 3 players that week. But other than that, I've got 2 Newcastle players, which means I only really need to make 3 transfers to transfer out 3 of these players before game week 29. So look, I'm not overly displeased. And look, I'm having Bruno Fernandes have Southampton up next. Like, it's hard to justify actually moving much of this team at all. And Phil Foden's been ticking over nicely. He's probably the player that's probably the most likely, as you'll see in the wildcard draft. So I'm going to come with that's likely to go. So without further ado, let's get into the first one. So again, that's my team currently. It's 106.9 team value, and I have 0.6 in the bank, 1 free transfer. But into the first wildcard squad for the week. Again, my goalkeepers, I did look about changing the goalkeepers, but in reality, I still think that Becker's the best third Liverpool player to own for the double game week 24-25, and I think he's better than Pickford. So that's why I've kept him in there. Fabianski obviously sits there in goals as well. In the defence, look, I've left a bit of money in the bank here, 1.5. Now, this is for the assistant manager's chip as well, because some people may want to play it, like on Everton, over that time period, because they are further down the table. Maybe they're going to expect them to get a draw maybe against Liverpool or somewhere. So I've just left them 1.5 in there based on the fact that, the assistant managership, we still don't know what it's going to be worth, and it's up to 1.5. And obviously lots of people don't have the team value I have either, so I've deliberately left money out. So hopefully this means that these teams are affordable. So in the defense, I've gone with Canate. I just really don't rate Trent very much. And I watched him on the weekend, and I tell you what, if Nottingham Forest play Liverpool next, right? And they have Gibbs White, they have Hudson-Odoi, and they have Elanga. And I reckon all 3 of them can torch Trent. I would actually, if I was Arnie Slot, I'd probably play Conor Bradley if he's fit enough, because he's probably going to defend a lot better than those ones. And that's how Forest like to play it on the break. I can just see Trent getting carved apart. So I don't really like him. I understand he gives attacking returns, but I think I'd just rather cover the cheaper defender. So for me, it's Canada. He's back fit. He's going to be back in the team. Provided he stays fit, I think he's definitely their best pick. I've gone with Ainey here as well. Now, normally I would have gone with the cheaper defender here from Nottingham Forest, but he's just looked so good. And they do have the Southampton fixture up in game week 22, which just means that, he's probably going to keep a clean sheet there. He could even get attacking returns. He does attack quite nicely. I watched him properly for the first time against Wolves, and I just really liked what I saw. So, yeah, he's in. And obviously, I've tripled up on Forest here, and I've tripled up on Newcastle, which is why, I'll get into the reasoning behind it in a minute. Robinson, I think you still need to cover the Fulham defence. It's either Robinson or it's Castagna. Obviously, I bought Robinson when he was cheap. He's now up to 5 mil. So maybe it's Castagna that you want to go for there instead if you're wanting to penny pinch. Hull still looks like an amazing option for Newcastle. He's just so good. I just can't see him leaving that team anytime soon. Cole Palmer, Mo Salah, they are the certainties. You just have to have them. If you're not having them and you're taking them on, then I don't know what you're doing. Gibbs White comes in here. Now, he has been absolutely fantastic for Nottingham Forest. All you have to do is look at the last 6 weeks. 8, 10, 6, 2, 8, 13. His underlying data is amazing. 4% ownership. He is a nice little differential in there as well. And the way Forest are playing, he's going to be getting your points moving forward. Bruno Fernandes stays in here against Southampton. I love that fixture run coming up. And I've just ditched all the cheap enablers in the forward line and the midfield. I've just moved them all out. So Gordon comes in as well with the Wolves fixture at home. I mean, Newcastle's run for the next few weeks is unbelievably good. They've got Wolves, Bournemouth, Southampton, Fulham. I mean, the next 4 weeks is incredible. You've really just got to attack it. I have considered bringing Gordon in myself, but now that the fact that they're likely to go ahead, I just don't want to be wasting a transfer, bringing in a player to then waste a transfer, taking him back out. Essentially, there'll be 2 transfers on 1 player between now and game week 29 for me, because I'm not going to be wildcarding before then. So for me, it's not really an option. But if I was wildcarding, he'd definitely be in, because then it's just 1 transfer, and I'd be happy to do that. Up front, it's a Chris Wood. He's just, the Woody Woodpecker just keeps on delivering. It's hard not to keep him in the team. Isak, again, as I said, is amazing. Went off of a tight hamstring in the game last night, but that was more precautionary. It wasn't an actual hamstring, so I wouldn't be worried about that. And Solanke is in here only because of the fact that he seems to be the most reliable person to play 90 minutes in the forward line and get a return. He's not amazing. I don't really like any of the third 3 forwards, but he's probably the best of the lot. So again, that's wildcard draft number 1. Let's go to number 2. So number 2 is reliant on Newcastle losing to Arsenal by 3 goals in the next round in February too. But I just don't think that's likely, which is why I would be anti this draft. And you've noticed in the last draft, I had no Crystal Palace players in there. Now, Crystal Palace's underlying defensive data is not that good. And in this particular draft, I have 1.4 million left in the bank. So very similar to the last one, but this one slightly more. So in this case, I've kept Timber in my team. Milenkovic obviously comes in instead of Aina. I've got in Chalobah instead of Munoz. Now, people sit there and go, why have you done that? Like Munoz, so Chalobah for the season has 54 points, right? And if we go to Munoz, he has 61 points. So there's nothing in it. I mean, Munoz has much higher defense attacking data, but if you have a look at Chalobah's games, so obviously he didn't play against his parent club, obviously missed the Arsenal game. He missed the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games of the season. If he'd actually played the first 6 games of the season, he'd actually have more points than Munoz. So people will sit there and wonder why I've done that. That's why I've done it. You need to dig a little bit further into the data. Yes, Munoz gets into amazing chances, but he's not actually a very good finisher. I've watched him the last few weeks, and he should have scored, but he's just not a very good finisher. Let's put it that way. Robinson again stays in here. I just think, again, you could make that Castagna if you are chasing money, but I just think he's a better option. And Hall's in there. In the midfield this time, I've got Gordon, but I've got Eze instead of Gibbs-White. Now, Eze's returned the last couple of weeks, and I definitely think he's the better option compared to Salah. And for me, that's just somewhere where I would go. Now, in the forward line as well, I've tripled up on Palace, which is why if Newcastle win, it's not a very good lineup because I would have to transfer out 5 of these players in order to make sure I had a team for game week 29. So between now and game week 29, 5 of my 9 transfers would be on taking these players out of the team, which doesn't make a lot of sense realistically, particularly if I get injuries and other things. I could then be taking -4s, which is why this draft doesn't look as good after the next one. But I just wanted to do one where in the reality it maybe Arsenal come back and win, but in reality I probably wouldn't go here to this one at this point. I'd probably go half. I'd probably take out one of Eze and Gordon and bring in Gibbs-White, and then you'd probably have to take out Chalobah and then put in someone else, and then you'd probably leave Mateta and then just roll him for the time being. That's what I would do. But Mateta's play again. He's a pretty regular player in terms of how many minutes he plays. He's very close to 90 minutes every week, and that's what you want from your forward. Again, his returns haven't been amazing at all, really, with 2 goals in like the last 10 weeks, which is not very good. But he's got a very nice run of fixtures coming up. But the problem is that Crystal Palace just don't score many goals. So that is also quite disconcerting. Now, on to the last lineup I've come up with for this week. Now, this one is based on, again, Newcastle and Crystal Palace blanking in that game week 29. So again, the goalkeepers are exactly the same. This time I brought in Trent, and this is why I don't like this lineup at all, because it just doesn't make much sense to me, because I just don't think Trent's very good. I don't think he's worth the money, and I'm definitely not going to be bringing him in. So yeah, Trent, he's there against Nottingham Forest. Southampton, I've actually kept Ahmad as a budget enabler in this one, and this one here I've actually got 1.8 million left in the bank, just an FYI. Mazraoui actually comes in. Man United's defensive data hasn't been very good, but it has been trending in the right direction. It doesn't tell us the real story. Like, a lot of these things have just been errors, and the Newcastle and Liverpool game I would just kind of write off. The other games, though, you can see there that the defensive data has actually been pretty good. And with Southampton up next, Brighton, Fulham, and Crystal Palace, I actually think Man United will go back to keeping some clean sheets, which is why I've just slipped Mazraoui in there at 4.4 mil. Milenkovic, again, he is like a Gabriel, but he plays for Nottingham Forest, and they just, unlike Arsenal, who aren't keeping clean sheets, which is why you'll find there's not many Arsenal players in this team. I just don't really rate them at the moment. Milenkovic, again, looks just amazing on paper. I just really like him. Robinson, Molienko's obviously in here. That double game week is going to come, and he's going to sit on the bench till then. But then in game week 24 and 25, they've got Leicester and Palace, and then they've got the Liverpool game as well, which is an extra couple of points. And I think that it's the only Everton player that I think is really worth the look at the moment, outside of Pickford, and I've got Becker instead. So for me, you could get Pickford and then get a Liverpool attacker, but then you're running the slot roulette machine, and I don't really like that. Again, Bruno Fernandes and Ahmad stay here. They do have really nice upcoming fixtures, and I wouldn't be concerned with that. I am rolling with both of them, and I'll be playing both of them this week. I can give you that much information. Gibbs-White, again, he just looks really good, and I just think that at that option, he is the best. I looked at Savio, I looked at Eze. I could have whacked a Savio in there instead, but I mean, Gibbs White just has a nice run of fixtures after this week. So for me, he's just a play. Wood stays here. Jackson stays here. And Isak. Jackson hasn't been amazing either. He's a bit like Mateta. I don't think he's likely to get rotated out again, but he's scored more goals than Mateta in the time that I talked about in the last 10 weeks. He's actually scored 4, so that's double. Again, they've got a half-decent fixture run, so he was unlucky. He's been unlucky. He's due, I reckon, a return. So for me, I think he's a hold. But look, let me know which draft you like the best. Is there something you would change? Is there a player that I'm missing that I should be considering? Am I being dumb and just ignoring Arsenal? Or am I being clever and planning ahead for you all? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for joining me. That's been the D Unit.